All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hey, all, welcome, and thank you for joining us for the fifth and final session of the Impact Speaker Series centered on healing justice and collective liberation. My name is Gary Leonard. My pronouns are he, him. I'm repping the Asian American Documentary Network here as a steering committee member, and I am joining you all today from the ancestral and unceded territory of the Munsee Lenape, also known as Brooklyn, New York. I am an Indonesian male with brown skin and dark black hair. I am wearing a light blue button-up shirt, sitting in my room in front of a blurred background. I do want to give a quick welcome since there are some non-ADOC folks here in the space with us. So ADOC is a national network of over 1,300 Asian American and Asian diasporic documentary professionals and storytellers that is working to increase the visibility and support of Asian Americans within our documentary field. And if you are not a member with us yet, you can do so by visiting us at a-doc.org, and you can join the ADOC fam under Engage, and then join us. And you can also learn more about us and join our newsletter. And we'll be dropping some links in the chat as well. I do want to mention that this session will be recorded and it will go up on YouTube. So if you're comfortable, feel free to turn your cameras off. And as I mentioned, this is the final session of our Impact Speaker Series that poses questions for us to sit with and grapple with. How do we define and redefine impact? What can impact look like through a lens of cultural strategy, political education, and the various ways in which documentary film and storytelling can inspire and catalyze change? These sessions aim to provide the ADOC network with a shared understanding and analysis of how film and documentary storytelling can support and create social change for our communities. And the Impact Speaker Series is a part of a larger ADOC Impact initiative that builds off the work of previous work, such as the ADOC Haverford Impact Lab, Cecilia Mejia's work as Impact Director, and the upcoming Impact Fellowship that I'll be sharing more about later. And the Impact Working Group includes myself, PJ Raval, and Ashko Hua. And it is my pleasure now. I'm going to introduce Jaime Sunwoo. Jaime is going to be moderating today's conversation. I'm going to share a little bit more about her. So Jaime Sunwoo is a Korean-American filmmaker, animator, and artist from New York City. Her work connects personal narratives to global histories through surreal storytelling. She studied art at Yale University and was a fellow at the Laundromat Project. Her work has been presented at Park Avenue Armory, Abrams Art Center, Flux Factory, and Westbeth Gallery. She has done engagements at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Museum of Food and Drink, Yale University, and also NYU. Her animated short documentary, Equality Tea, was featured in Vogue and Whetstone magazine. Her paper puppetry animated film, Handwritten, premiered at Lincoln Center for New York Asian Film Festival and is now available on Amazon Prime Video in Fantastic New Worlds, a handmade Puppet Dreams collection. She's currently touring to share Specially Processed American Meat, a performance film centered around Spam, the canned meat, and its significance in Asian America. I now want to hand it over to Jaime to take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks for the sweet introduction, Gary. And I just want to share that I'm moderating discussion today as a fellow filmmaker rather than separating myself from that formal Q&A approach. It's going to be an organic conversation. I'm going to track time and offer some questions, though any one of our filmmakers can propose questions as they come up. You're also welcome to, like all the participants here today, you're welcome to share your thoughts in the chat. We'd love to know them. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. We're going to kind of dedicate a Q&A toward the end, time permitting, but I'm really hoping to dedicate a bit of time depending on how many questions we get from the chat. I'd like to invite all of our filmmakers on screen. And I think, Gary, are you going to introduce all the filmmakers? or no, I think I am. So I'll go ahead and do that. So we've got Andrew Nadkarni here, who is a queer, multiracial filmmaker based in Brooklyn, New York. His directorial debut, Between Earth and Sky, won Best Short at Big Sky and Hot Docs Film Festivals, Hot Springs doc film festivals, and was not nominated for 2 Critics' Choice Awards and the Cinema Eye Honors. The film premiered on POV PBS on October 2023, a 2023 Brick Lab artist in residence. He integrates sustainable community care and trauma-informed practices into his filmmaking process, telling generational stories about diasporic communities. A graduate of NYU Tisch, he's worked as a reader for documentary grant orgs, production supervisor on the New York unit of Knives Out 2, and production coordinator on Modern Love and Aquafina in Nora from Queens. Andrew recently produced the narrative feature Actual People, which is now streaming on Mubi. So yay, Andrew, welcome. And then we've got Geeta Gandbhir, who is an award-winning filmmaker. As a director, recent credits include the series Born in Synanon for Paramount, How We Get Free for HBO, Eyes on the Prize for HBO, Lowndes County, and The Road to Black Power, which was nominated for the 2022 Critics' Choice Award, won a 2023 SEMA Award, and is nominated for 2 2023 Emmys. She directed and ran the series Black and Missing for HBO, who won a 2022 NAACP Award for Best Directing, 2022 Independent Spirit Award for Best Documentary Series, and the ATAS Honors Award, and the Cinema Eye Honors for Best Series. So lots of celebrating. She directed the film Apart with Rudy Valdez for HBO Max, which was nominated for an NAACP award and won a 22 Emmy Award, and lots of other projects. Just some shout outs, short film Call Center Blues, The Asian Americans for PBS, Why We Hate on Discovery, I Am Evidence for HBO, Prison Dogs, an episode for The Rapture. So lots of credits. Kudos to veteran filmmaker Geeta. And today we'll be focusing on Geeta's Through Our Eyes series, which is on Max. So welcome, Geeta. And then last but not least, Soyeon who is a Korean-American director and producer born and based in Los Angeles. Her directorial debut documentary feature film, Liquor Store Dreams, which is about second-generation Korean-American children of liquor store owners in the LA area, made its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2022. Her work has screened at Tribeca, Busan International Film Festival, BFI London, and more. Currently, So is a BAFTA Breakthrough USA participant, an alumnus of the CAM Fellowship in 2021, armed with a Camera Fellowship by Visual Communication, and recipient of the Sundance Uprise Grant and the Sundance Institute Documentary Film Program grantee. So welcome, everyone. And yeah, I just want to first just say I've watched all of your work all throughout the year. While I was on the festival circuit for my own short documentary about handwriting called Handwritten, I'd actually been on similar like short blocks or just programs with specifically Andrew and So I've seen both of your works in festivals, and then I just watched a few episodes from Through Your Eyes today, and all your works are so brilliant. And I also think like this was curated so well because we have so many commonalities in the themes that we're exploring. And I just want to open it up with our first question again, share as things come up. But I wanted to first ask just generally, what impact did you want to make through your films and for who? And I'll pass it off. Well, I guess I can do a quick start. So especially processed American me is like I used hybrid storytelling basically to make this research inspired story that was historical and autobiographical. It centers around Span the Can Meat, but I'm really using it as an easy way to transition into talk about the Korean War, sort of intergenerational trauma, the World War II, and shared histories across Asian diaspora communities. So talking about spam is easy because it's about food, it's really accessible, and then it kind of leads into these more difficult conversations. And really, I wanted to first of all just reach Asian American and immigrant folks first of all, to build a sense of community through different events for the film and the film itself. And I also wanted to spread awareness about the ongoing Korean War and the fact that it's very much an American issue and it's something that we should think about. And that peace in the peninsula is not possible unless we care and we bring about change. So that I would like to pass it to Geeta to share more about impact and through our eyes.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, y'all. And I think you reading my bio just made me realize how old I am. Like it was more than anything else. I was like, but I'm really happy to be here with, with folks who are just doing such great work. It's a big honor. And so I think for me, my background, I came up with in Spike Lee's camp many years ago. But so he and Sam Pollard were my mentors, and also Tula Goenka, who is a professor at Syracuse University. Were sort of the first, were with me through my first 10 years in film and really taught me everything that I knew. And interestingly, I started in narrative, and being in that Spike for, all his complications and, and Chris Rock joked with him about being like the angriest black man in Hollywood, or there were, he has gotten, a reputation of being, a fighter and challenging to work with and all the things. But I think, again, from the very door, I think what I learned was that, again, about the studio system that existed even then in Hollywood and exists today, again, is white supremacist, patriarchal, homophobic. Like, again, that that the stories were not told for us by us. And that was something that Spike and his camp kind of fought against tooth and nail and paid a terrible price too, in many ways, right? Again, that battle can lead you to be labeled as, as a problem. And so I think that some of what we see today with his work in his struggle has been based on that. But I think, so for me, I think the coming in, with 40 Acres being sort of a training ground as a filmmaker, I think from the beginning, that was my perspective. It's like the studio and oftentimes walks on one side of the street and you walk on the other. And and I think what we're seeing in our world as far as, as documentary film, for a long time, it was, a colonial practice, a white lens, and like, again, extremely patriarchal, and sort of rife with all the issues that dominated Hollywood, but just, paid less, right? Like less funding available. There used to be only two places. There was PBS, and then Sheila Nevins showed up, and there was HBO, but so to be in it, you had to be oftentimes extremely wealthy. You had to be white, So I think even though, documentary filmmakers tackle a lot of social justice issues, the same problems pervade our industry. So for me, I think, and I have been in, having been in it for a long time, my realization has been, obviously it's a long game, for every 2 steps forward you take, it's 2 steps back. And also too, what we're constantly battling against is is incredible inequity and the constant attempts of, just as it goes with narrative film, to essentially monetize what we do. That the interest really lies within corporatizing it. You know, the streamers, there was a couple of years of like throwing a lot of money around with the streamers, and now they, you know, the interest really only lies in making money, you know, ultimately.
Yeah. And I was wondering, you know, you have so much experience, and also I can hear that you're just like trying to shape the industry, and that's awesome. I also just wanted to hear what impact you all wanted to make and for who for Through Our Eyes as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah.
Specifically for sorry, if I went tangential, but
Oh,
it's
good.
needed. I think the lesson in it, because it's not just for Through Our Eyes. I think the lesson is all that for me. It's always been a for us bias, right? Like the question of that, like the audiences, the assumption that audiences again are that predominantly white, again heterosexual, you know, even male audiences are kind of the most important and the only ones who are watch and are interested in what the work we make is a complete false narrative. But again, I think for Through Our Eyes, again, it was specifically a Sesame project. So what they were looking for, I was for a Sesame workshop. What they were looking for is for children and families to watch together. But again, the stories that we wanted to, that like, it was a series and I got to work with a bunch of other filmmakers, but the idea was to make sure that we were, for me, that we were telling stories that were underrepresented, that we were speaking to, you know, again, you know, America, or the US, you know, as is not, you know, again, what we are shown and what we are seeing and whose stories get told, again, is reflective of all the ills that I spoke about before. So I think for us, it was really important that we use the platform that we had as a vehicle for, again, folks who may not have that, like normally have access to tell their stories the way that they would want to. And I think, like Andrew, it's really important to us to work in partnership. We see it as a collaboration. I worked with Multitude Films, and they are, again, I think politically aligned. So again, the second iteration of this series, we focused on Indigenous Hawaiian community that is essentially they're hula practitioners. So that was really, and they are working to reclaim hula. So that was important to us. And then again, representation on the ground. Our team was Hawaiian. And then I have an Indigenous Hawaiian director also, who we worked with. And so it was, so that, I mean, that was the idea, but it stems back to everything, I think. But like, again, it's not just this project, it's been a long game.
Yeah, it's been a journey. Thank you so much. And yeah, you mentioned cross collaboration and shared networks, and shouted out Andrew. So Andrew, can you share some of your experiences on what impact you want to make specifically between Earth and Sky, and for who? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And I want to, I guess, sort of echo what Geeta said about maybe the value of something like public media, a POV, you know, independent lens, something with PBS that allows filmmakers to retain the rights to their own stories, because with the corporatized streamers, you know, those are in many ways opportunities for these companies to take stories from communities and monetize them, maybe with or without the participation of those communities, and maybe with or without the participation of those filmmakers. So I think we've all been lucky to be able to benefit from public media in certain ways, and also, you know, be, you know, conscious about how we're working with maybe those more corporate, financial oriented places. For me, I think with Between Earth and Sky specifically, and also I think with the work that I intend to make beyond that, the impact that I want to have is really about making people feel seen and kind of opening up conversations that have been buried, specifically generationally, and even more specifically, I think within immigrant and diaspora like families. Like my own, I'm a biracial family, has heritage from India and like Russian Jewish heritage, and so I don't exactly fit into one exact category or another, which I think a lot of sort of second, third generation immigrants feel. And so, but what I did discover, and during the process of making Between Earth and Sky, which was about my aunt, who's a tree climber, she fell and made this miraculous recovery, but it really became the process became an exploration of what gets passed down across generations within our family. So by opening up new conversations about the value systems that have kind of sort of been hidden, the pressures that are there to perform, to achieve in order to be worthy of love, to be valuable. What that brought out for me was this desire to speak to anyone that maybe doesn't feel like they're enough, including speaking to myself with that, which was to feel like you are inherently worthy of that place, feeling safe, feeling at home, feeling like you're deserving of love. And so that was, in some ways, the impact I was hoping to have was kind of an emotional and psychological impact for myself and for the people watching the film, to be able to connect whatever challenge or trauma or disturbance they were facing, and to think about the fact that recovering or healing from that disturbance is not going to be a straight shot. It's not going to be consistent and easy, and you're not going to get back to exactly where you were before. That every trauma or disturbance, whether you've experienced it or received it sort of generationally, it has ripple effects. And the more you try to bury it, the more those ripple effects kind of build and lead to other ripple effects. And so really the idea of shining light on those wounds and bearing witness to those in as sensitive and thoughtful a way as you can, and using that in a film to be able to make other people feel less alone. That was some of the intention of what I wanted people to take away. One of the things, and I think that's another thing with all of the films that everyone on this screen has made, is that they're so multidimensional, and so there's the direct kind of impact, and then there's the indirect impact of like seeing representation, seeing yourself represented on screen, and all sorts of other things. So in my film Between Earth and Sky, there's also an ecological, environmental layer, but that was in some ways secondary to me in terms of what I was kind of feeling strongest about as we were making the film. And I'm wondering if Soyeon wants to jump in with your take.
I always forget I'm part of this conversation, not just as a spectator, or, I'm just so fascinated. Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Andrew. It's, wow. I guess for me, just as a filmmaker, I think for me, I always wanted to create impact, go against the grain of whatever stereotypes that Asian Americans have been portrayed in media. So for me, it's like, I want to also stay true to my life, even though no matter how stereotypical it may be. But I do want to always create nuance and make people think and help people expand their perspective of what could be, what they think people are. And so that has always been my mission. So I think for me, I have always promoted kind of finding your own resources of information, not always relying on the news, because you can't, the news also has their own agenda. And so I think that I'm always so thankful for social media, just because now everybody gets to share, and you get the information from the source. And I think that's really important. And I think that's why I think this is why you need to have stories from people who obviously have lived it. No matter how much research you have done, I also feel like there will always be something lacking if you didn't grow up in it, or if you just don't know it firsthand. So I always encourage people that if you're making a film about your life, which I did, is that you are the expert of your life. So might as well tell it. And so I think with Liquor Store Dreams, I had always intended the film to be aimed at Korean Americans, just because that's what the film had always been I always wanted to make a film that almost criticized Korean Americans and our Korean families, just because there is so much anti-Blackness within not only Korean Americans but Asian American communities. But I think that for me, change starts at home, and you can make the most change at home. Because I feel like, why would I listen to some random person that I don't care about? But if it's my dad, it's like, ooh, okay, now I have to address it. So I think that was kind of that's been the impact, like throughout this filmmaking process. How do I also create impact within my dad, but also the Korean American community? And in what ways can I help them instead of direct, I think there might be through impact, one of my goals might be bringing Korean and Black communities together. But I also think that, before we even get to that, why don't we address issues within the Korean American community first? Because I do feel like we're just jumping a step. So I think for me, it has been, change doesn't obviously happen overnight. So I want to create a safe space for people like my parents to gradually kind of deprogram whatever they thought. And then step by step, hopefully expose them to do different people, different things, just so they realize, hey, because I think that even within our own communities, they believe stereotypes as well. And I'm sure that when people look at Asian people, they're like, oh, they believe those stereotypes as well. So I think that, how do I do that? How do I help my parents to see beyond those stereotypes, that not everybody is exactly the same, no matter how strongly people may believe, because I do feel like so much of media will always fall into that trap of perpetuating these stereotypes, just because it's easier, it's more clickbaity, you can have engagement. So I think we've been trying to do a lot, especially in our impact campaign. So I can talk a little bit more about that later, but yeah.
Thank you. And I just already have so many thoughts. But the question of, since Soyeon, you already brought up how you really want to look inward, look nuclear, look within like a microcosm of your family and of your experience, of your father's experience, managing this liquor store and interacting with fellow Angelinos in LA, and how the Korean and Black communities sometimes do clash, and how to grapple with that. And of course, these conversations that happen at home, they have a broader context and are indicative of broader issues. So I was wondering, similarly, there's the impact you want to make toward the audience, but I just kind of zooming all the way in, how have you, Geeta and Andrew as well, and Soyeon, and I know you started sharing about this, but how have you experienced impact within your own lives and within your film subjects? Because, it really starts there. So I'll share my experience, for instance, like, just in the process of making, especially Process American Me, um, as its namesake is, like, it was really for me to process all of these very difficult conversations. And some of the things I learned within just my own family was my roots in North Korea. My dad was born in Pyongyang and escaped as a child. My grandfather was stuck in North Korea for a long time until he was smuggled down. And a lot of this wasn't talked about. In fact, like, my dad's own, official legal documents say he was born in Seoul. And so is the case for many Koreans that moved during that time. And a lot of our ancestral records have been destroyed or now are not accessible. So a lot of these conversations that I had within my own family were just, finding out our own family history in the first place, which was very painful for a lot of my members to reflect on. And at the same time, it made me wonder, like, what the importance, I guess, wonder if there's a right way to cope. Because, for instance, my grandmother hid a lot of information from my mother, when it came to her own war trauma and sort of the beginnings of their own lives in the South. So, and my maternal grandmother is also from the North. So, and at this, but then for my father, it was actually really important to know the history and to have a sense of being grounded. And my mother is very much like pushing for the American dream, kind of erasing the past, starting new, and really reaping the rewards. And my father has always kind of been more kind of reflecting a lot on Korea and expressing a lot of homesickness, and was quite disillusioned by his life in America. And so the impact at home was just unleashing all of those conversations. And then, of course, the impact continued when they actually saw my piece. Because in the end of the day, like, I am my own narrator, and kind of responded to, you know, yeah, like how it helped them process, or also how it kind of unraveled really difficult and challenging truths. Like my father, every time he watches the film or experiences the piece, he has like these waves of grappling with our more difficult past, that are not, it's not always flattering. So yeah, balancing that out has been interesting for me and for my audiences. But specifically, I want to hear from all of you on how you've seen families and your own family, if you shared stories about your own family, how they've been impacted and how you've been impacted. And I'll pass it off to Andrew.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jaime. I think that with personal and family filmmaking, there are a lot of unknowns and risks, about how what the possibility of hurting someone that you have to, live with as a family member. I think that for me, the biggest impact that making a personal film had for me was I was really asking for vulnerability from adults in my life. In this case, my aunt, in a way that maybe my parents weren't providing. I was really asking for a space where someone could be vulnerable, that would allow me space to kind of be vulnerable and open up myself. And so the bravery of the people that we make films about and make films with, to share that part of their life, that is kind of inspiring to me, that like a better and easier future is possible. That's what we might be able to show with the films, is that like we don't have to just keep moving the same way we've been moving. So just a more specific example, in my film, there's something that comes to light in my family about sexual abuse that was covered up, that took place in the family. And the process of making it and talking about it led to these new discussions where all these different family members that all had different perspectives, different memories, different ways of idolizing or not idolizing their parents, had to reconceptualize how they felt about their parents, and maybe acknowledge for the first time that they believed my aunt about this abuse. And then for me, it was also a space where I felt comfortable with my aunt. Then she was the first family member that I came out to as queer, and that I talked to about my own experience with assault. And that showed me that it's okay to share and bring people in before you have everything figured out. Before making the film, I felt like I have to have everything figured out, and I have to be result oriented. I have to make the film. I have to know what the film is before I make it. And through making Between Earth and Sky, I allowed myself in some ways to be more process oriented, to let it go, and to let myself kind of be open to all these new elements of my family and of me. So I hope that maybe answers the question in some way. But yeah, I don't know, Geeta, would you like to add to that?
I don't have that much to add, because I've never done this. I've never made a film. I think the question is specifically about, if you make a film about your, your life experience. I know now my own life experience obviously ultimately ends up somehow, or my response to what I think is powerful ends up impacting all my work, right? Like what I'm interested in, obviously. So it's not like I'm, it's some nihilistic thing where I'm not, in the process. But I think making a film about my family would probably completely break me. So I have never, I've never wanted to do it. And nor do I think, I don't
I
think
do wonder though, with Through Our Eyes, it's similar in that even though it's not about your family, you've
100%.
come into the homes of all these different
Oh, and
families.
honestly, that's true of anyone you work with, right? So
Yes.
again, Through Our Eyes maybe is, there's but you're always in folks' homes. So I think across the board, the experience, I think what is relatable is the idea that, you must handle, again, I think of the people that I work with, who agree to work with me and to want to tell their stories. Again, they are collaborators, they are participants, they are partners in this. They have agency, they have, there isn't that sort of relationship. Like when you think about the old terms of like subjects, and what does that make you? Like those sort of, that term, like that is, it's like decolonizing the process is super important to me. And again, it's an attempt to, oftentimes you become as close to them, if it goes well, depending on the kind of doc it is, right? Because you might be making a political documentary, a documentary about somebody who is, who you are exposing as having done criminal things. You're not going to end up being family with them necessarily, but there still is, you want to honor the trust that they give you, and you want to be transparent about what you're going to do and what the film is actually about. So I think I still feel that I carry the responsibility of that relationship, and knowing and just being really thoughtful about the impact on their lives. And I think there's a general, I always talk in the beginning with my team and also with them about the do no harm policy. Like we have a do no harm policy, like leave no footprint, like again, this is, we make a film, but this is someone's entire life, and so I think for me that sort of those setting up those policies and boundaries, but and I literally call it a do no harm. Like, and if at any point they feel, so the last film, I had a film recently that came out, it's a short on HBO, How We Get Free, and the woman in it is Elizabeth Epps, is incredibly brave abolitionist. She's now a representative, she's a public figure. About a couple like months before we were to finish the film, she expressed that she didn't want it to come out. She was like, I don't want to do this. I'm frightened. I don't necessarily want my people to know this much about me. Like has real anxiety. And so that became for us a concern. And we had sold the film got picked up by HBO. But the bottom line for us was, if she doesn't want the film out, the film is dead. Like this is her life, and I don't care who spent what money and whatever we put into it. She has to live with this out in the world. And after, we went and screened it for her, and I think after seeing it, she, but we gave her the choice. It was like, this is up to you. So I think that's also, and that was painful. It would have been painful, obviously, after we spent all this time and we like really want her work out in the world because she's an abolitionist and she's this incredible freedom fighter, and like her message is so hopeful in this time and so needed. But honestly, that's where I stand. And I think where I've always stood is like, it's, this is the onus is on them to decide what they want. So.
Oh, and so you're on mute.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, oh my God, okay, because that was a lot. I feel very similarly because not only am I, it would almost seem easier if I didn't know people in my film, but these are my parents, these are my friends that I've been friends for a very long time. So I do have a duty to them as their daughter and as well as like a filmmaker, because no matter what, I do hold so much power. I am literally holding the camera. So I do think that I have to be very mindful that there is always, I have to be aware of the power play, and that they have to understand exactly what they're going into. And so I do feel like, there's a really big fight in my film where with my dad, and my dad kind of how do I say, if I don't know if it's right to say that he got really enraged and he was very anti-Black. And I think that we were arguing. And I think a lot of people that watch the film be like, how did you even let him or convince him to even have that conversation? And I said, well, because my dad fully believes he is right. I don't have to convince him that my perspective, I could be like, oh my God, he's so wrong. I should protect him and not even like show this to the world. But I think that in talking to my dad, I said, hey, I understand what you said. And I think the important part, especially with participants, because there was I think within the film, I had to show him the film. I think that's the way that we ended up going. And he saw himself and he was like a little embarrassed, but also at the same time, he stood his ground and he was like, I said what I said. It was true to me at that time, or what I still believe. So I think that as long as both parties feel like they're being totally genuine to themselves, no matter whoever is going to watch it, because you can't predict who's going to watch your film and who's going to say what, because on one side, I get a lot of hate comments be like, oh my God, that girl is so closed-minded. Why couldn't she understand her dad? Whereas some people might be like, oh, your dad was like a lot to handle, you know? So I think that as long as the people within the film are completely aware that this is a film, that it's going to go out into the world and that we can't control who watches it. At the same time, my subject, Danny's sister was in it for like 2 seconds. But the film is also about Danny's family. And Danny's sister was like, hey, what if I don't want it out there? In my head, I was like, Angie, you're not even part of the film. You're in it for like 2 seconds. But also they have such a close relationship that if she said something to Danny will be like, let me reconsider. And I think that was the good part, is it could go either way. You could show them the film and ease their anxiety, or they can watch it and be like, oh my God, I hate it so much. Because I've had incidents where people watch it and they'll be like so self-conscious. They're like, I don't even want it altogether. And I'm like, totally respect it. And I have to, even though I don't feel like what they see. I don't see the insecurities. I don't see what they see. I have to understand it. And luckily, that project almost had no stakes. It was just something I did on my own. Whereas this one, I said, I was working on it for 4 years. I raised so much money, like on my own. I like really just struggled so hard. So to hear her say that, I said, oh man, this is really tough. I said, let's just take a step back. And after she watched the film, she was like, oh, okay, I love it. You know, it's like, there was so much pent up anxiety for both of us that I think that the thing that I'm taking away is that with every shoot, like you're both consenting that, hey, you're going to be on camera. Everything that you're going to say is going to be on film. And then we will always like obviously show you the cut at the very, very end. But hold all your judgments. Before I showed the film to my dad, I said, don't say anything till you watch the entire film. Because I'm sure halfway he might be like, yeah, but you know, stuff like this. So I think it's just like just laying it all out and being really, really transparent. Because I think that with filmmakers, we can be so in it and goal oriented that we're obviously affecting people's lives. Like I can go out into the world. I'll go out and make other movies. But my dad lives with this and will continue to live with this. And I think that for, I guess, like ordinary people, I don't know people who are like not in film, I don't know. It will affect them differently just because, especially even in the film festival, when it's out there, it's just a totally different feeling. Like everybody goes up to my dad to talk to him. And I'm sure that it can feel very, very overwhelming. So I think that every step of the filmmaking process, you just have to be there's just so much communication involved to let them know exactly what they're in for, so that this is not going to be anything new. And of course, just to check in all the time.
Yeah, and on that note, on people reacting to these films, what impact have you seen as people have come out of the theater, or people have messaged you about their feedback on it? Like, how has it impacted them, and have there been any sort of surprising reactions to it that you didn't expect? So for me, like, and as I mentioned, like, it's not all flattering, everything that I shared. I think it was important to kind of balance out that challenge of like, um, I definitely don't want to harm the folks that I'm talking about. But like it's also important to have challenging conversations and be able to tell the truth. And so like with my father, for instance, like we didn't talk for a month after I first showed him the film. And he had seen the show before because it was a live production first, and was like, even though it was hard for him the first time, like he was really proud of me and like definitely said that, I had shared like, yeah, an honest portrayal of what had happened. And so like he respected that. But it's something that we still struggle through every time, and it was, he had never asked me to sugarcoat anything. And in the end of the day, like the film is honoring my family as well, despite all of the struggles that we did go through. So in the end, like it is about, and then, on the other end, there's folks who are like, no, only you gotta save face and only the good things, only so, but maybe that to make impact, you have to kind of go there. And as far as audiences go, like I've had people reach out and being like, this is my life. Like you have shared exactly like, and when we're so isolated in these diaspora communities, sometimes it feels very lonely. Like, oh, this is just like my weird family. And like, we're just going through these weird issues and like, everyone else is fine. And so sharing it has been really lovely because it's also a very joyful work. I think it's like just about the core question was like, what is community? Because for me, is it just am I American in every sense of the word? Do I feel belonging in this country? And then beyond that, what does it mean to be Asian American and have that solidarity with such diverse opinions and such diverse experiences, but the shared commonality of being Asian American? And then even beyond that, being like, do I have any responsibility or obligations to relatives in North Korea that I can't access anymore? And as like the generations pass, like are they part of my community or no? Like, so all of these questions for me were those are the same questions that a lot of my audience members were coming up to me to share. And I think what was surprising to me was how universal the story was, like not just for Asian Americans and immigrants, but like just all sorts of people, because World War II and the Korean War affected the globe. So people came up to me sharing how that affected them and their families. So yeah, so Young, you had shared kind of like some of your audience reactions. Do you have any more to share in that process?
I mean, most people, like, to me, I'm like, if you've cried, I've done my job. But on the flip side, articles, we had a Huffington Post article come out and I got so much hate mail or like comments in that on Twitter. And you can see it because a lot of it is, and I think I've always anticipated it just because of the nature of the film. It's when some people may think that if you're pro-Black, that you're anti-Asian. So I think that was, and a lot of it stems from a very like isolated, lonely place where people feel like, oh my God, I'm not being heard. And most of the commenters probably like Asian men, who knows? But I think that it's like, I already anticipated that. So I knew it was going to happen, but also the love is so much greater that I don't let it get to me just because I know the impact that I've made. I knew that because I am a child of a liquor store owner and there's so many of us that I knew that I had to be a representative of our story and that I knew that so many people would relate to it. And that was my impact. because also as like a cinephile, I never saw this perspective told before, and I kind of wanted to be shown on screen. And so for me, for it to just exist, like I've done my job, and the impact will come in it by just watching the film. I know that we have done an entire impact campaign, and for anybody who is interested, I'm open to sharing my deck that we've created. Shout out to Gary and Leilani through the ADOC Impact Haverford, the ADOC and Haverford Labs. Like we created this entire impact campaign that is obviously first we're targeting Korean Americans, and then it's like, how do we activate Asian Americans to be more politically active? And then how do we bring the Asian and Black community together? This is why I always advocate for like highlighting the collaboration and the partnership rather than all the hate, because there's actually been more collaboration. It's just that the hate just attracts more attention. Like if you look on the news, every little thing is like a lie. Like I'm just so, don't ever believe everything you see on the news. And a lot of it, obviously, because they have their own ulterior motives, that it's only to create more hate. And I do think that that's not my job here. I think we want to see the other side. So we've been trying to do a lot of work, but it's very slow and it's a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea that you had such vigorous and challenging and dynamic reactions to your film. I do just want to note for time check, I'm aiming for like another 3 minutes of answering this question, and then we're gonna start wrapping. So if you can keep it brief, I'm gonna pass this on to Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll be quick, but because I want to give Geeta a chance. But yeah, I think that impact can be like multi-directional. I think it's really important the work that Geeta and Soyeon do to show people not as a monolith, and to show that there is to represent people, but to show that they are individuals. I think that's kind of the power of these films. And I think that for us, just kind of trying to get the film out to a wide variety of people, with support of education guides, going out into nature, writing poetry, and bringing the film to people that are otherwise nature deprived, whether they're incarcerated populations or people that are in urban settings. That's been for us the kind of path for our film. But in general, I think it's just clear to me from these films that these filmmakers, all of you, have made, is that like the film has this power to kind of open minds, and also to find the universal in the specific, to use the specific to say something about the universal. And Geeta, I'd love to hear anything else that you want to add.
Sure. I think really more specifically with How We Get Free, obviously there's a mission, How We Get Free, which is the HBO film I was talking about. There's sort of mission, Elizabeth's mission is to end cash bail and to end the criminalization of poverty. So that we'll be working with a lot of organizations to put that out in the world, because cash bail is such a attainable, ending cash bail is such an easy, attainable thing that doesn't have to be a partisan issue, right? But it's like essentially and I knew I wasn't even, I'd like to think of myself as well versed in the whole, all the failures of the prison industrial complex. But the truth is that, cash bail wasn't on the forefront of my mind. And yet so many, like countless people spend time in prison because they literally just can't afford their bail pre-trial, which is horrendous, and it destroys lives. So that will be working. There's definitely the working with grassroots organizations and larger groups, and again, trying to show it to politicians, etc. That's a big thing. And then with the Through Our Eyes, which was the second iteration of it is not out yet, the one which is about reclaiming hula, but similarly it will be something. This films are geared towards young people. The first one that we did was the first series was about young people struggling with difficult social justice issues and trying to make a film that was appropriate for children maybe 8 and up to watch, to understand that this is not something that they're alone with. I think you spoke a lot about this, Andrew. I think both of you. So Jan, you also spoke about it, but the idea of people feeling very isolated in what they might be dealing with. And I think my film for that series was about children who have parents that are incarcerated and what that is like for them. And we got a couple young folks to talk about it, and we kind of, they allowed us, the parents and children allowed us into their lives. But the idea for that was, again, to for kids who have parents who are incarcerated, but also for kids who do not. It was to educate, to again, to destigmatize and to humanize the situation. Yeah. And I think it's being used. Sesame has, the one thing they do well is outreach. They have a really large, and
that's excellent. Yeah, no, I thank you so much for everyone for sharing. And I just want to say, yeah, like I'm hearing that our impact campaigns are super dynamic with educational screenings, community screenings, so and all sorts of workshops and different types of engagements for different ages. So Gary's going to share information later on how everyone can keep up with our works. I personally am also booking community and educational screenings now for next year. And yeah, I just want to thank all of you for your reflections. And in the broader context of collective liberation, we would like to advocate for peace in Israel and Palestine and share a call to action for permanent ceasefire. Andrew will share resources in the chat, and I'm going to pass the virtual mic to Gary to share some ADOC news.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I want to just thank you all so much for this beautiful, intimate conversation. So much love to Geeta. So Andrew, for your truth telling and honesty, and of course, Jaime, for your amazing moderation. Please send affirmations via chats and over emojis if you feel comfortable doing so. I think we heard and felt a lot about what healing is, about embodying new ways of being for a more just world. And that means, we heal towards a world where, being Asian American is to be in solidarity with Black liberation, to think about how we can break cycles of generational trauma and violence, and really to bring collective practices that can impact and transform the consequences of really deeply rooted internalized oppression in our collective bodies, where, hopefully we can all imagine worlds where we're all free. So just thank you so much. Couple things, ADOC members, please join the Impact Producing Slack channel if you haven't done so. Also, there's going to be chats, be on the lookout, or links in the chat rather. Sign up for the ADOC e-newsletter, join us over on ADOC Slack, follow us on social media. Again, this is our final session of a 5-part Impact series. If you missed any of the previous sessions or want to go back and rewatch this one, which I absolutely plan to do, visit our YouTube channel. That's going to be /AA Network. And then really quickly, we're really excited. This has been a long time coming, but I do want to preview an upcoming Impact Fellowship that we're going to be announcing. Keep your eyes out. So the ADOC Impact Fellowship seeks social justice-oriented leaders, filmmakers, impact strategists, thinkers, doers, and believers with ideas for projects that organize within and support AAPI and Asian diaspora communities to bring about long-term equitable social change by leveraging nonfiction film, narrative, and storytelling. So we will be supporting 3 Impact Fellows this year, along with $20K towards the implementation of their Impact project, as well as a year-long Impact Fellowship. So much love in terms of all the work that has gone into that. And again, shout out to everyone who's really played a major hand in terms of bringing this together. And so with that, thank you all so much for being here, and just sending so much love. And I hope everyone has a really beautiful evening. So bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.